Hello? There it is. All right. Test, test, test. Excellent. Thank you for coming back. We are here for a listening session this morning. So this is our opportunity as a congregation, as a call committee, and as church leaders to begin to talk about what we are looking for as a lead pastor. This is a really important part of our process. For those of you who have been through a call process or are familiar with the call process, the very first thing we do is we create a ministry site profile, which I sort of view as like your dating profile on Tinder, right? So this is like who we are, what we're looking for. We're trying to attract candidates to us. And so we've started with the call committee and the church council and staff. We've put together kind of a draft of that ministry site profile, and I think you guys have as a handout, you got a summary of that. And what we're hoping to do today really are two things. One is hear from more folks and get more feedback about who we are and what we're looking for so that we can refine our dating profile and get it up and posted, which we're hoping to do in the next week or so. And also to provide Bishop Nagel with more information about what we're looking for, because the Synod and the bishop will be a really important part of our process in helping us to identify candidates. So the better that we can educate them, the better they'll have a chance to kind of filter through candidates that are out and available. So please don't be shy. We're going to do this from a logistics standpoint. We're going to pass this microphone around after Bishop Nagel says a few words and gets us going. So if you have something that you'd like to say, please don't be shy about it, but wait for the microphone so that we can get it recorded for folks who can't see it and so that everybody can hear it. So with that, I would like to introduce Bishop Nagel. I did notice, Bishop, that you have achieved the rare Triple Town award in service in Minneapolis. You've served in downtown at Central Lutheran and at Uptown at Salem English and Dinkytown at University Lutheran Church of Hope. And now as the bishop, I mean, I don't know that there's much more that you can achieve, but welcome and thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Matt. Let's just do a little test. Does this work? Is that okay? Okay. Feels a little echoey to me. Is that always that way? Okay. I will bear with it if you can bear with it. I am so glad to be with you folks this morning. My thought for today, I want to start with prayer. I have a couple questions for you, so I'm going to start with those, and then I'm going to just open it up and we can have some conversation and see where this
from the pulpit that I think we've had solid preaching from capable men. But as I always said, my number one requirement for a pastor is somebody I like to go out and have a beer or coffee with.
Nice.
And I think we've been fortunate. All the men that I've known here, which is a long time, have all been men of that caliber. And the women have too. The ones we've had, I don't know them as well, but they have also been, I think, very personable people. I think the church of our size is fortunate when you have a man or woman leading it that you feel like is one of you.
Yeah.
And understands the history, and I think we have a very favorable history, I believe, to rely on. Not everybody, I think we've agreed, even in the mission statement that we have, which was a bit controversial when it was put together, but it has one statement in there that makes it, I think, palatable for everybody. And it says, even though we do not necessarily think alike, it does not bother the fact that you love one another, respecting all views. So I think that's been sort of typical of our history, at least as far as I'm concerned.
That's really helpful, Bud. Thank you. I'll just comment as somebody else puts their hand up that in reading the ministry site profile last night, I noticed that little clause in the mission statement. I thought that was a helpful clause. And I also noticed the reference to wanting somebody who would know you by name, would go out for coffee, would have conversation, would have that kind of personable part of us feel, which is a good thing to name. Not every pastor acts the same way. And it's helpful to know that that is a high priority in this church. And it's a priority for me, period, honestly, but I just know that not every pastor acts that way. So I think it's helpful to name that out loud. You've got it?
Yeah. So first of all, Bud, did I turn it on? Can you guys hear me? Okay.
Yep.
First of all, Bud, I know you drink coffee. I didn't know you drank beer. And so now it's football season, so we'll find out if we can drink beer together. Huh? Okay. And so anyways, I've been a member here for about, 16 years, but I've been coming here for over 20. My kids grew up here, and it's always been we have a very welcoming congregation, and that's great. We have a great welcome statement, and I have heard of other ELCA churches that have similar statement. They talk the talk, but they don't walk the walk, and I think that's the challenge here as well. But I think we do it. We do walk the walk pretty well. I think we need a pastor who wants challenges. Our congregation, from what I can see, is shrinking. We're down to one service every Sunday. We used to be at 2 or 3. I've been through several pastors. They've all been great. But I think we need a pastor that's got a sense of humor as well as a vision of the future, and can see the challenges that we have, and can come up with plans to address those. I think we need to grow our youth ministry. I think we need to grow our adult ministry, and I think we used to be more outreaching church. I would like to see us get more involved globally as well as locally, and use our history of volunteerism and contribution to both the community and the world Lutheran community. And so I would want to see those as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sure. I will comment. I don't think I said this. I was going to tell you before, but what might be a challenge for a pastor here? That'll be my next question. So you kind of began to address some of that too. But that's the next question. What might be a challenge? But for right now, stick with this. Why would I want to be a pastor here? That was really helpful. Thank you.
We're very rooted in the Word and liturgy. And while some folks might think that is dull, boring, passé, we take great pride in surprising and delighting the listeners in the pews because of people like Greg Peterson. And anyone coming here should see our commitment to non-traditional, traditional worship as a positive and not a negative. I think that would be very important.
That's helpful to frame it that way. Whoever's taking notes, grab that one for sure. Yeah, thank you. I'm seeing lots of hands now.
I just want to comment on the quality of leadership that we have among the congregation. I'm not very active anymore, but I see it in the women's Bible study group that, you know, almost anyone in those groups would be capable of leading a small group and grounded in the Word and willing to donate their time and their money to do other outreach things too. So in some ways, because we have such strong leaders who have experience in the world, in business and whatever, there may be some conflicts about how we should go about doing things, but my experience has been that we are able to work through those things.
And what a priceless piece to have strong leadership in the congregation. That means you want to match that with good pastoral leadership. That's a pretty big deal, but that works. Yeah.
I think why a pastor would like to come here, being a member here many years, there's a joy in the congregation here. There's a joy of listening to the Word. There's a joy of serving. There's a joy of helping others. It's a place where you come and you see friends, and when you're going through sorrow, they lift you up. And when you need joy, you're celebrating life. They're celebrating marriages. This is what this congregation is. When you come here, you feel filled up. You feel renewed. And that's what this congregation does. And I'm just so happy for that. And we want to continue that. We want a leader that inspires us, challenges us, and keeps us moving forward with the Lord.
Nice. That joy word came up a number of times in the ministry site profile. I noticed that. That was helpful.
I'm going to echo what Phil was saying, but from a different perspective. We haven't been here 50 years. We've been here maybe 3. But what we've seen has been a tremendous joy. This congregation could not have been more welcoming to us than what they were. We came over here largely because of the music program. At our old church where we'd been for 40 years, it kind of collapsed. And the program here is marvelous and by itself will draw people, I think. But the joy that Phil was talking about permeates, and you don't have to be a long-time veteran to be one of the beneficiaries of that.
Yeah, thank you. I like to hear that people, or the newer folks and the folks who've been around for quite a while, can experience these things. Yes, it's important. Let's take 2 more of this, and then we're going to transition.
It's kind of been said, you know, that we were rooted in the Word, but it's also the music in the congregation is what brought many of us here, and he said that as well. I've been a member since '97, so that's partially why we came. Good preaching and good music, and there's an excitement around putting that all together and having that, you know, I think if I were to come here, I'd be excited about that as a pastor, so.
Nice, thank you. Let's do one more.
I think what would appeal to a prospective pastor is that I see this as a congregation of unlimited potential. When they decide to do something, there are always people who come forward and can move a project or goal or priority along. And so that, I think, is a strong appeal, that we are a can-do group of people.
Unlimited potential. I think that's wonderful. And I think that's actually the truth. I believe that. It's biblical.
Okay. I'm pretty new to this community. but I do enjoy the company. And I have been to the Bible studies, the women's Bible studies, and it's going to start up again pretty soon.
Good.
And I'll join that again, yeah.
Thank you. So let's transition now, and the next question is, what might be a challenge for a pastor coming here, a lead pastor coming here? And you've alluded to some of those, but keep on going with that. And here, it's okay to speak openly and candidly, with respect, of course, but it's okay to name the honest pieces of this, right? What might be a challenge for a pastor coming to serve here, a lead pastor coming to serve here? And remember, challenge is not all negative, right?
We are new to this congregation. The thing that brought us here was relationships we had with our family. This is a tremendous church at this time. We've had tremendous leadership so far. I see a new pastor coming in, starting at the top, and that's hard. Mm-hmm. If you already have a congregation that is succeeding, it's probably easier to accomplish things if you start at the bottom and work up. Starting at the top and maintaining is very difficult. So you need a good leader who can do that.
Who can do that? Yeah. Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you.
I think it would be much easier for a pastor coming in if the committees were brought back. All the committees were abolished, and I think bringing back at least some committees would really enhance communication between congregants and the pastor, and so that we all know what's going on, and the pastor gets an earful of, from children's ministry to youth ministry to the, the money, areas. And so I would like to see committees come back, at least some of them.
That's helpful. Okay.
Good morning. I think we came to this church about 5 years ago, right before COVID, and I think what would be challenging is to come into a congregation that is doing quite well, but also at a period of time when everything has changed, and how we, as families, attend church has changed, and our priorities, and how we connect with other people in the world has changed, and how to be a leader who's humble enough to let the congregation come together to decide how we change, but also be one who leads so we can get to that together.
Mm-hmm. That's helpful. Thank you.
We've had several conversations about this in the past, but we need to grow this congregation. It's slowly going down, and we need to either incorporate other churches into this church that are gradually having more difficulty than we are, which Pastor Paul thought that there was a possibility of that before he left. But we need to do something to encourage more people. I mean, I see this all over, we went to a church in Brainerd because we went through a lot. Their congregation's going down also. But we need somebody that can handle that situation.
Yeah. And the truth is, church numbers are decreasing, as you say, all over the place. We notice that, we see that. And I partly want people to be able to bring in new members because I want new members to be able to experience the community in Christ, right? But I don't want people to bring in new members just because it's got to be the way it used to be. It doesn't have to be the way it used to be. It has to be the way the Spirit wants it to be now and into the future, that 50 years ahead. So I want to keep that in mind, and that's a tension that a new pastor is going to be trying to live. How do we do this? I want enough outreach that you have the membership that you seek, but I also don't want it to be we have to we have to get it to be a certain number because otherwise we're not as good as we used to be. You can be wonderful right now and in the future. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. But I know this all has to do with budgets. I see all those pieces going on too. I understand that, but it's a challenge. It is. Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to bring up is we've gone through, and since I've been here about 18 years, we've gone through a lot of large improvement projects that were needed.
Yeah.
And we've gone through them and gone through them. There's still a couple small ones left. It's going to be a challenge to get people to continue to contribute to those because they've contributed big money in the past to try to get some of these big ones done.
Yeah.
And you got future ones who are going to come up one time. You're going to need new roofs, parking lots, those kind of things.
Yeah.
They're just maintenance things, but they're very expensive.
Yeah.
But there's also sound system we need. As you said, it's echoing in here. We looked at one recently that's perfect for this church, but it's $100,000.
Right.
That's not. So we still got those things that are going to be a challenge.
Yeah, yeah. I really commend the leadership of the church for the ways you've kept this place. It's a beautiful, beautiful facility, and the things you can do from here are amazing. Yeah.
I know I already said something, but I gotta point something out. Almost everything that has been brought up as a challenge is related to our strengths. And one of the reasons why Pastor Paul was so successful is he was willing to share power and leadership with others. We do have tremendous leadership in this church, and a lot of it comes from the women. Not to say anything too controversial, but if a male pastor in particular has a problem sharing leadership at all, but particularly with women, that's going to be a challenge.
That's a very helpful thing to name. I mean, I'm hearing some of the gendered language even as we've talked today, and as you can tell, I'm a female bishop, right? So that's not any big secret here. I've been a female lead pastor, naming it. But that'll be something for the call committee to really be thinking about, like, how do we do this together? And that you are a congregation with lots of strong leadership from everybody. You've got lots of strong leaders. I can feel that.
This is a congregation that needs really sophisticated leadership because we have high expectations and incredible ability. And the kind of leadership that can keep our eyes and our hearts focused on the gospel. Because while we look very similar in this room, we represent the whole spectrum of theological and political and social views. And our leadership has had a way of calling us to stand above that and work together as a community.
Yeah.
And it's really important that the next pastor have that ability. Yeah. The second thing is they need fundraising ability to raise the money for a new sound system. So it's easier to hear people when the bishop comes to visit to talk about the next pastor.
You've got the money, it sounds like.
Let me talk about the sound system. It's already done. It's already done. It's already been chosen. It's already been donated. It's 100% paid for. And it will be delivered in early November and operational the first to second week in December.
That's awesome.
It's already done. Yeah. One more thing, and this is not a challenge. We have, in my opinion, and I'm thankfully part of the music program and the choir, we have probably, in my opinion, the best music program there is anywhere. And if I am a new pastor coming in and I am thrilled about music to be part of the worship and part of everything else, it's already here. And it's growing and growing and growing. So.
Yeah. So somebody who values the music in that kind of a way as well. That's very helpful. One more. Let's do two more of this, and then we're going to transition.
We're extremely new to this congregation,
Yay.
but I think, very, very, very new. But I think the thing that really attracted us here is the multi-generational congregation that's here and how you can learn from all the different generations about how to spread the word. And I think the thing that I really like that someone mentioned is the potential right? To see how having a multi-generational congregation can lead to growth, and how you can choose leadership from all those generations to really continue to build the congregation and look at the strengths that exist here, like the music program, and how you can utilize that to increase growth and attraction. So I think it's a lovely community, and we want to be part of continuing the growth here, and I think having a pastor that has the ability to see the importance of that continued growth and ways we can just further build on the strengths that already exist, inclusion, diversity, things like that are important too.
Nice. Lots of good things. Thank you. Let's do two more.
One more? I was just going to say, I think what I'm hearing, and it reflects what I think, is that there's something here for everybody, but the challenge is to make sure there's always something for everybody, and then secondly, to connect us all enough to what's here for other people that we care to continue those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's helpful. One more.
This is a time in which you pick up the paper and you find that church attendance is dropping throughout the country. It seems to me a desire would be for anyone coming in, new pastor, to understand that that does not necessarily mean Normandale Church. It may mean a man who can, or man or woman, who can reimagine what the church is, so that he can address the needs of the church as it goes forward. And we do not need to be falling in line just because the world seems to be, and our world seems to be less intriguing to people. We need to understand we're part of society. He needs to understand the church needs to change as well, even though that may be difficult for some of us. That kind of a person with that kind of a vision, I think, would be extremely helpful to us.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to do one more back here, and then we're going to, we call this grace, right? A little bit more, a little bonus.
We have at Normandale for many, many years Ruth Oliphant. And I've always described her as a saint on earth and what she did with children. And I think children in the church are so important when we grow up. So I really think the youth programs are important. We've hired a new youth pastor. It's good now. It would be nice to see that supported because that's the future. We're all sitting here because we all went to church as kids, and we had friends in churches, and I listened to news about children and mental health issues, and you need community, and you need friends, and you need a place to feel a part of something, and I think that's really important.
That's great, thank you. I noticed in reading the ministry site profile, there are a number of things that address a lot of the things that you've brought up today, so this is really helpful that things feel like they're in general alignment is what I'm hearing. To address the children piece, there was I'm not going to try to dig for it right now, but there's an aspect of the ministry site profile that talks about wanting somebody who's a good leader to support the team. So you'd want a lead pastor who really values and is able to empower and find voice and communication for the new children, youth, and family people, the youth people, you have a number of staff people who do those kinds of areas, who can really support and support all of that. You'd also want somebody who can support the general pastoral team. You get a lead pastor, they're not the only pastor in this place, right? You also have Pastor Rebecca, potentially. You have another pastor, a third pastor, the role that Pastor Ian had in the past. So to try to think about, like, what is it you want, and how does this lead pastor, working with the leaders of your congregation, help you figure out what you need, how this fits together for the staff, for the pastoral staff specifically, but the whole staff, and for the leadership of the congregation. Somebody spoke about committees, those kinds of things. How do you do your work together? Those are all good things to be talking about, and a transition time is a good time, the right time, to be able to talk about this kind of stuff. So I don't hear this as, oh my gosh, what's going on? Your church is falling apart at all. I hear it as, wow, you've got a lot of good possibilities. You've got a strong, strong history of leadership and of lots of things, but you've got strong leadership and you continue with that. And somebody that can really listen with and partner with the people that are already in place to try to discern what it is the next step, how the rest of the staffing fits together, and take it from there. That's what I'm hearing from you. I also heard a lot about joy. I heard about the music piece, and I read a lot about that in the ministry site profile. A lot of this feels like it's kind of in some connection. Let me answer a couple questions that have already come to me, and then if you've got other questions or comments, you can make those too. And then Matt, help me, give me like a 10-minute warning kind of thing. Somebody asked about the number of candidates coming through. So just like churches have decreased membership, the number of candidates, people ready for ministry, those numbers are dropping as well. They've dropped pretty significantly. We've got 30 or 35 candidates currently in Minneapolis area Synod. We used to have, I think it was around 100. So those numbers have dropped, and they've dropped all over the nation, not just here, but everywhere. The truth is, you're not going to get a first call candidate to be your lead pastor, most likely. You're going to get, looking at your paperwork, you're going to get someone with some pretty significant experience, because those are the people who are going to be able to come in and bring the leadership to be able to work with the strong leaders that you have here. And that's a good thing. That's positive. If you have Pastor Rebecca already, and then if you have a third pastor, that third pastor might be a first call candidate. That would be up to you folks to figure that out. To remind you also that the ELCA, we've got pastors of word and sacrament. That's what most of your pastors, in your case, all of your most recent pastors have all been pastors of word and sacrament. They preside at communion, they baptize, they preach. That's what it's about. That's the kind of pastor that I am, right? There also are deacons in the ELCA. We sometimes call that word and service. Word and service. So they'd be preaching, but they might also be leading a service kind of thing. They might be working with a wholeness and healing center. They might be doing a lot of visitation. They might be doing any other aspect. They would not be doing the sacramental part of it. But they are word and service, so that's a deacon. There are some things that you have going here that might say, oh, a deacon could be a really good third person of that pastoral team. So that's something to consider in your call committee in the future. This call committee is looking for the lead pastor. But in the future, as you discern what comes next with that lead pastor, you might be able to think about these other aspects too. Hope that doesn't muddy the water, but just gives it kind of a little bit more possibility and flesh. I wanted to just name, let's raise your hand. Allison, will you help me with this? Raise your hand if you were on the congregational council, do you call it here? Church council? This is good. Church council members, thank you for your leadership. Yeah. And raise your hand if you were on the call committee. So Matt is the chair of the call committee, back here, up here, over here, and here. That's really helpful. Thank you. Thank you. That takes a lot of extra time, right? And you're like, tell me about it, Jen. It does take a lot of extra time. So to simply name that congregational leaders are putting in prayer and thought and time and sometimes some anxiety and all of that they're giving on behalf of the whole congregation. So thank you for what you're doing with that. I want to also comment that on our staff, we're in a transition time as well, as you know. So I'm the bishop, and then there's bishop's assistants. John Holden is the bishop's assistant who works with your congregation specifically. He is the one you're going to see and hear from the most as Matt makes contact. I work with John, and we have time every single week where we're sort of generating ideas, and people are both telling us what's happening. At some point, we'll add another bishop's assistant to our staff, but right now we just have John, so we're a little bit trying to figure this out too. But he is the primary one for you folks right now, so that is good. What questions do you have for me? I can't answer all of the questions, but I can answer some, and I can get you answers for the big ones if we need to. Or other comments that you want me to hear today?
So if you had candidates...
Let's use a microphone here. And then we're going to go back there after this. Yep.
Have you had candidates that look promising come to you?
Yes.
Is it possible for... Right, are you looking at having them preach to the congregation as you're going through the process, or are you going to try to whittle down the potential candidates before they come here
and preach this.
It's a good question. Your call committee is really the one in power, right? Your call committee gets to say, we want these candidates, and we're gonna give you names, and we're gonna help the process. But your call committee gets to make some of those choices. To be honest, nowadays, there's so many sermons online that your call committee can find a lot of preaching just by looking online. And usually the candidates are going to be providing to the call committee a sample of sermons and other kinds of things as well. So.
I'm just going to speak loud because I'm on the microphone, but there is an aspect of confidentiality here that we have to be really careful about. You can imagine that there might be a pastor who's deeply loved by her congregation in another spot, but is thinking about maybe a transition time and might be interested in being a candidate. That's somebody we will speak with in confidence. We will, as a call committee, we will be perhaps attending a service to get a sense for how that pastor engages with her congregation. We'll be looking at stuff online. We'll be reviewing her walking papers, but actually having her come and preach here might be a really difficult challenge. So we want to be very respectful of the confidentiality of the process. It's a tricky time for a beloved pastor in another congregation who might be looking and might be a good candidate for us. So we'll be very careful about that. But as a call committee, we're committed to getting underneath and behind and really understanding what makes pastors tick, and we'll do our best in that setting. So.
That's really helpful. I think that word about confidentiality, that's always going to be the case for these call committees. That's why they were picked, so that you can keep confidence, you can work together as a group. It's a really powerful experience for a call committee to go through it together, but it needs to be confidential. So they'll find ways to learn everything they possibly can and make sure they find the right person to then recommend to the council and to you, but a lot of it will be confidential.
This may be a little specific, and it should probably go to the call committee, but I'm not sure we have access directly to them easily. But I would like very much, you alluded to the echo early on.
To the what?
The echo.
Oh, yes.
I just
the
did
what?
it. Echo.
Yes.
I hear myself back
Sorry.
there. It's very difficult to hear a female pastor in this church.
Mm-hmm.
Even a male pastor with a higher voice, such as Paul Pedersen, who gave great sermons, but half the time I'm in the choir. I couldn't understand what he's saying because it's all, and maybe I didn't know about the new sound system, maybe that's going to fix it. But I would very much like to see a male pastor who I could relate to, and not a grandchild age pastor. There are a lot of gray heads in this community, and I think many of us cannot quite relate to going to a 30-year-old with our problems because they don't understand them. That's one thing. The other thing is someone alluded to there's something for everyone. I would disagree with that, and I think this is through the entire Lutheran Church. Okay, I'm sorry. This is through the entire Lutheran Church, I think. And that is, we lose people kids out of college because as far as I know, there are at least probably very, very few programs to engage those people in the church once they are out of college. Why are there not singles groups for those people? I think there's wonderful youth groups here, but I think throughout the entire church, we're missing that group of people, and they don't go to church on Sunday. They were born into the church. They were baptized, confirmed, and I had 4 children. 2 go to church, 2 do not. They all go, they're all believers. They just don't go. So I think that would be a good goal. Something a pastor could address.
I think that thinking about young adults and how young adults are integrated in part of the congregation is that's a big thing across the church. You are correct about that. And I am always intrigued as I hang out with campus ministry students and young adults, the amount of faith and the amount of amazingness that they have in them, and then that connection to congregations all over the place is often a hard connection to make. So that's something that we need to be thinking about as well. What you brought up about the sound system, really, really important. And if anything, who was it who was working on the sound system?
Sound system will be solved.
It's going to be solved, but I will comment that a lot of sound systems are not always adjusted for the voices of the people who are preaching from them. So if you've got women with voices in women's ranges and you've got guys with higher voices and things like that, to make sure that those technicians that come in are adjusting them for the people who are going to be using them the most so that everyone can hear them. I hear that often, but I think some of that is an adjustment issue, but we need to adjust what we expect the person that's preaching to be sounding like, right? Because I want you to be able to hear the sermons of everybody who preaches here. That's important.
I can hear them, I just can't understand.
Exactly. I have heard that as well. I understand.
The new system, and Lauren who runs our system, can walk with a tablet throughout the congregation and change it
Great.
as he walks.
Yeah.
And so that anybody who is having a problem, he can adjust that.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. I mean, we came to the presentation of this thing. It's a big, huge thing. So we'll sit up here in the corner, and it will project back into all the trance area, which is difficult to hear, and in the very back.
Yep.
But it projects without having to be loud.
Nice.
It's amazing what they can do with this thing.
That'll be amazing.
And
And that'll really, that's so important. I'm also hearing different voices asking for different demographics of a pastor. I'm hearing that. I think you're hearing that as well. And that what I pray is that the call committee goes into this with this wide open slate of who might be your pastor. Might they be male or female or non-binary? I don't know. Talk to your call committee people. Let them work through this. My suspicion is there'll be more than 30 because they have to have some experience coming into a congregation like this. I hear you about what you're saying about wanting somebody who can really identify with the situations that you might be in your particular stage of life. And I think that your call committee can hear that and can work with that and address that. Those are important things, and we all want a pastor who can get us, who understands us. That is, I hear that, and I feel that myself. And I think you can do that in a few different ways. So I'm going to invite the call committee to just be creative in how you think about people, not writing anybody off at first, but being open to the different styles that people bring. Other questions or comments? Anything that you needed to comment about, Matt? Okay.
You talk just a little bit about your experience in a congregation in transition like this, and
in particular,
just how we should be thinking and being in the waiting time.
Yeah, it's a good question. So Matt is asking if I might comment about being in a congregation during a transition time. I've been in lots of congregations during lots of transition times. Maybe the biggest piece, and this goes, I always think of it from in my spot as a leader, as a pastor, and this goes for other kinds of leaders too. We talk about non-anxious presence. We all get anxious during transition times. Will my church feel like it's always felt? Will they be able to take care of me if there's a crisis? What will it feel like? How will we do this? And that's pretty normal for that anxiety to be raising a little. A good thing is that you have Pastor Hans as an interim, that Pastor Maria is coming as an interim. Interims are trained and are picked specifically because they are able to work with congregations during transition times where the anxiety might be a little bit higher. What I also know about anxiety is that when it gets higher, our brains, this is like a science brain thing, our brains aren't able to be as creative or open or flexible as maybe they are at our very best. So my prayer is that Pastor Hans and Pastor Rebecca and Pastor Maria and the rest of the staff can work together with your leadership to keep the anxiety a little lower and a little calmer with a trust that you've got a strong history, that God has led you this far, and that God will lead you to the next piece of this as well. That the Holy Spirit has plans for you and for your congregation, for your good, for the good of your neighborhood. I have every confidence in that, but it's going to be a dance that you're going to do with your colleagues and your pastors and one another. And there'll be days when you might be feeling a little bit up, and you have to deep breath. You can do this. Your congregation has this. And we're going to be supporting you. Pastor John Holden's going to be supporting you. I'm going to be supporting you. We're going to be praying for you. It's going to work. But to know that that bit of anxiety or that little, we're not quite as rooted as we usually are. Of course you're not quite as rooted. Pastor Paul Peterson's not here, and he's been here for all these years. And he knew your name, and he knew all these things about you. But you are okay. You are the people of God. You're the congregation. and you've got this, and you can work with your leaders to be able to take the next step. Is that helpful, Matt? Is there anything else that's helpful? Okay. Any other questions or comments today? I'm really hopeful for you all. Did you have one? Okay. I'm really hopeful for you. I'll stick around a few minutes so we can chat if there's anything more. You have my prayers, and there's a really amazing thing going on here. It's good. It's very good. And I trust this call committee and your leadership to kind of see us into the future. And I look forward to coming back, if I'm lucky enough to come back for an installation and some of those things in the future too. So God bless you. Thank you.